I think everything that has been declared in the Defence Review and what the Prime Minister has said is all good stuff. Recognise we have so heavily cashed in the peace dividend at the end of the Cold War that we now have a military that is barely a conventional defence and an unbalanced nuclear deterrent as well. So what has been announced? Building ammunition factories so that we can domestically produce the ammunition that's required makes a lot of sense. Having a cyber command and an electromagnetic command makes absolute sense with the lessons that we're learning from Ukraine. He who dominates the electromagnetic spectrum dominates the battlefield. So that is absolutely good news. Purchasing or making 12 new nuclear-powered submarines with their capability with cruise missiles, hypersonic missiles, and torpedoes, again, makes absolute sense to protect this island country. For some time, a lot of Britain's deterrence and conventional and nuclear has been based on our naval power. You know, we are an island nation. Our navy has always been very powerful. And, the chief of the defence staff is a naval officer who no doubt is, more happy directing things on the water and under the water. And I think in this case, it makes sense. So our nuclear deterrent is based in our submarines with Trident missiles. One is always at sea. And our attack submarines are hugely capable. And as we've seen, with the sort of the open battlefield with so much surveillance around, it's very difficult to hide on it. It's very much easier to hide in the vast oceans around the world, which is why a subsurface capability is a good idea. Now, these 12 nuclear-powered attack submarines have the potential to silently travel all around the world, and critically, they will be carrying cruise missiles and hypersonic missiles, which again we're seeing are having great effect in the Ukraine war. And actually, Western cruise missiles like Storm Shadow and others are highly sophisticated. And certainly at the moment, the Russians are finding them very difficult to intercept them. So having the 12 attack submarines sort of makes a lot of sense and is a deterrence that the Russians will understand. It is hugely expensive and it will take a long time to get them in there. But as long as we start to lay keels for these submarines today, then that is, to me, a good way to spend our money to secure the defense of this country. There is a lot of security around the range of these missiles, but certainly, some of the variants have ranges, well over 1,000 kilometers. And, a submarine can move silently all around the world and can certainly get into a position where it can affect, Russian military bases and others. I wouldn't say they can strike everywhere in Russia at all, but there is a commitment to develop missiles, develop cruise missiles and others. No doubt extending their range will be important. And I think we just look at the Ukrainian attack on Russian bases yesterday, very imitative, very imaginative. And one of the attacks was 2,000 or 3,000 kilometers from Ukraine. Now, if Ukraine can do that sort of thing and have that sort of impact, I don't think it's beyond the wit of ourselves to be able to produce something similar using our submarines to get into a position where they can't be identified and they can then launch their missiles. Water drones, again, a innovative military capability that's come out of the Ukraine. Ukraine has developed these, has been hugely successful, not only attacking Russian ships, but also attacking aircraft. I think when it comes to submarines, this is a slightly, I am no expert in tracking submarines, but what I understand is it's incredibly difficult to track them. Of course, Britain used to have Nimrod surveillance aircraft, and now we recently replaced those with Poseidon American aircraft, a sort of variant of the 737 jet. But I understand it's still looking for a needle in a haystack. So no, I think whatever maritime drones are produced, and no doubt there will also be now with the use of AI, we've seen again innovations coming out of Ukraine where drones can be launched that don't rely on GPS navigation, but can navigate through AI support. In a similar way, you could imagine that subsurface drones could do the same. But the ocean is so vast. I think it is still a challenge to find these submarines. So at the moment, until that changes, it strikes me as being a good way to deliver conventional deterrence. If Russia prevails in Ukraine, it is, most people believe, certainly people who study this even more deeply than I do, that that Russia would then attack into probably the Baltic states or maybe Poland. And we've discussed before how Russia is building forces up along borders with Finland. Now, if Russia attacks any further west than Ukraine, they are now into NATO. Therefore, we would then have an Article 5 situation where the UK would get involved. Now, if that happened, what we term in military terms the deep battle, one has a close battle where soldiers are firing rifles at each other, but to effect a battle and a war, the art is to attack deep, to break lines of communication, logistic knots, airfields, that sort of thing. Again, which we've seen Ukraine doing very successfully. It is possible that if NATO and Russia came to blows, then Russia's deep battle would be focused on the UK for psychological reasons, I expect, more than physical reasons. And I suppose the concern at the moment is if they decided to use a tactical nuclear weapon, a missile launch from an aircraft. Admittedly, they've just lost 30% of their nuclear capable aircraft in the attack yesterday. Britain would have little response because it is unlikely, even in this scenario, that the UK would fire what we call a strategic ballistic missile at Russia, which is very much larger than a tactical nuclear missile. So that is a possible concern. But I think the way we prevent it is to review our nuclear deterrent, nuclear holdings. And if we had a tactical nuclear missile on, there are suggestions that UK might buy the American stealth fighter, the F-35A. If we had that, then Russia would be very unlikely to go down to the tactical route. Therefore, we focus on a conventional conflict between NATO and Russia. And actually, even as things stand, even without all the additions of SDR that we've talked about, NATO collectively in Europe would vastly overmatch conventionally the Russians. So it is at the moment, I think it's unlikely, but deterrence is all about showing credible force. Putin understands strength and exploits weakness, and that is what we must do to make sure that doesn't happen.